Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here, and I'm the author of Social Selling, Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. I'm also the co-founder of a UK social agency called Digital Leadership Associates. With me today, all the way from sunny Florida, is Bernie Borges. Bernie is fast becoming one of the leading people around artificial intelligence in sales. And what we want to do today is really explore how artificial intelligence will impact us salespeople, and develop the discussion around what's good about that and what's bad about that. So welcome, Bernie. Just for the audience, give us an introduction about yourself, what you do, where they can find you, etc.
Sure. Well, thank you, Tim. I appreciate you having me here today. I'm looking forward to our conversation. As you said, I'm Bernie Borges. I'm the founder and CEO of a content marketing agency called Find and Convert. We are located in sunny Florida, and we work with clients across the U.S. Haven't hopped across the pond yet. I also am the host of the Social Business Engine podcast. We are in season 3. And I typically interview a combination of brands that are using social strategically, as well as thought leaders like yourself. You've been on my podcast to share stories twice. Yeah. Most recently about your awesome book. So on my podcast, again, I showcase brands and thought leaders like yourself on how they're using social strategically across the business to really accomplish, measurable business goals. And of course, all of that is available at my agency is findandconvert.com, and my podcast is socialbusinessengine.com.
And where are you on Twitter? You're Bernie Borges.
I am at Bernie Borges, Borges.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. So I've been looking at your website and looking at your videos and some of your writing, and it's been really interesting, especially around how artificial intelligence can actually make an impact. The first thing that I looked at was because we do a lot of work around content, and we're very lucky that people actually read our content, but there's a lot of people that put out content that's not read. And there was a VentureBeat article that came out recently with some research that said that 95% of content isn't read. So, I mean, is this something? Could we use artificial intelligence as a way to actually help us as not just salespeople, but content marketers as well?
Tim, I just did a whole podcast series on that. In fact, it was the first Up Close podcast series that I did. We call it Up Close because what we do is we take a topic like that, and I did 5 back-to-back episodes on it, and they published Monday through Friday. Now, they were shorter, but the point is that I partnered with Brandon Anderson from Seralytics, and we talked about how that very problem that you cited, 90 to 95% of content doesn't work. It's not read. And the reason is fundamentally because content marketers have to conduct research on what content they should produce. And when they're conducting that research, they're doing it manually. And by the time they decide what content marketers are going to produce, what content they're going to produce, they're basing it on outdated information just because it takes time to conduct that research.
Yes.
So AI, because AI is a machine, if you will, not necessarily a physical machine, but it has the capacity to process information a whole lot faster than people can. So using AI, marketers can actually let AI do the heavy lifting and do the research and analysis of exactly what content has worked for them in the past, as well as what other competitors are doing. What kind of content are the competitors publishing that, believe it or not, there's information available as to how well that content is performing, so that the content marketer can actually make a decision in pretty close to real time, with current information that really helps them understand what content they can produce that will yield results, that will get read. And that's really hard to do with people because, again, it's a lot of heavy lifting. It's traditional research and analysis. It takes time. People are busy. Sometimes, goals change and priorities change. So AI can do that heavy lifting and a whole lot faster than people can.
I think that, the thing about artificial intelligence is it's not going to take bad content and suddenly make it good. If there's bad content, then people aren't going to read it. But I mean, if we take some of the things, from our own work that we do in social media, what we do is we go, here's a piece of content, and we're doing it manually. I think my audience will enjoy this piece of content, and then we post it. And really, what we're looking to do, I'm guessing, with artificial intelligence is to take that thought process away and let the machine or to do that.
Yeah, the way that I like to frame it up, Tim, because a lot of people still don't understand exactly what artificial intelligence is. Some do, some don't. But think of it as a device, even though it's not a physical device in this context. It can be when it's manifested in a robot, but we're not talking about physical robots. We're talking about software and application. Yeah. Think of it as you feed it information. You give this AI application.
Just like going to Google and typing in best places to stay in Florida.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But in this case, you're feeding it information, and the more information you feed it, the smarter it gets.
Right.
That's why it's called that's why the word intelligence in it. I'm not a fan of the word artificial, by the way, but that was coined a long, long time ago.
Yep.
But I like the word intelligence because it actually gets smarter, and it is capable of, think of us as humans, we can only eat so much, right? And so imagine there was something that could eat, 1 billion times more than we can, right? You and I can only eat 3, maybe 4 meals a day. Imagine if we tried to eat, 100 meals a day. So it's a silly analogy to kind of paint the picture. AI, you feed it vast amounts of information, way more than our human brain can handle. And AI can handle it and process it really fast. And the more you feed it, the smarter it gets. So it literally learns what has worked in the past. In this context, what content has performed in the past, what content is performing well for your competitors. And then it comes back and it says, here's, topics that you should consider writing content on. It doesn't come back and say, do this one. It says, here's the ones that are most likely to perform well for you.
Okay. So and this continual learning process is important because, our everyday lives are continually changing. And what you may have your competitors doing something, and it's something that I always see when people publish research. It's like that. Actually, that's what happened in the past. It's not actually what's happening necessarily today. Things have moved on, but that gives marketeers a great way of actually saying, here is a piece of content, and we've gone through a process of writing that. How can I serve that up to people that are actually going to be interested in it?
Exactly. And you make a really excellent point, Tim, and that is that the world moves fast every day. And just because something worked for you a month ago doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work again if you publish something similar to that tomorrow. So that's why one of the most compelling aspects of this is that you can allow AI, or I like to say you can harness AI to feed this information to you, these insights into you in near real time,
right?
So that you don't have to spend days or weeks, and sometimes if you're a big brand, months conducting research and then making those decisions based on outdated information.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, you've just done a podcast or an article with Adobe, and you've put that out over the usual channels, but you can't guarantee that people are actually going to read it. But you could actually serve that up to people that have got, because if you're looking at most people now, we're connected to people, and the amount of data that people actually hold on us is immense. And the number of data points, and you can start, and once this starts happening, people will be holding more and more data points of it. So ultimately, what you're able to do is get I say in my article, it's about getting the right content to the right, to the right person at the right time. And really, ultimately, you could write one piece of content for one person. If that person's going to do a $20 million deal with you, you don't want to actually put it out to 20 million people. You just want to serve it up to one person.
Exactly. And so what you're getting at now, Tim, is the whole idea of getting highly personalized in your messaging and in your content.
Yes.
And that's highly desirable, but it hasn't been easy to do because it hasn't been easy to determine exactly what is the most relevant piece of content for an individual. So if marketers harness the power of AI to really understand what is of a particular interest to an individual. And so let me give a little more context on that. Traditionally, we gain insight into people who visit our websites by capturing information about them, and we capture that information in a database. So from a technical term, that means it's structured data. It's in a database. We know name, title, industry, and other data points.
Email,
Right. What we don't know, because it's not structured or captured in a database, is what they just tweeted 5 minutes ago, or a comment they left on a LinkedIn post, or on a forum, or in a LinkedIn group, or anywhere else on the web that is not in a database. That is called unstructured data.
Yeah.
AI has the capability of actually finding that and learning from it, making sense of that, so that if you're one of my prospects and you're out there tweeting something or doing something anywhere on social media that is, again, unstructured, I would have the capability of picking that up and knowing exactly what you're thinking based on those comments.
Yes.
And then that gives me, as the marketer, the opportunity to then personalize my messaging, my outreach to you specifically based on what I've learned.
And how do you see, because at the moment we're talking about marketing, how do you see this impacting the salesperson? What is it that we can do as salespeople where we can actually harness this ability to outreach with this content?
So this, I believe, Tim, is the biggest reason in the history of the world. It's a pretty bold statement.
It is, yes.
For marketing and sales to once and for all become aligned.
Okay.
Because if it isn't obvious yet, what we've been discussing so far is marketing harnessing AI to deliver a highly personalized message to the prospect. Well, that is an attempt to create more sales conversations.
Yes.
So we've got the best opportunity ever in the history of marketing. I might maybe qualify it as marketing technology. Okay. To really align marketing and sales together. So that means that in the C-suite, we need to have, cohesive strategies, and then the marketing technology and the sales technology needs to be implemented down. Processes need to be implemented down to the actual sales individual level. And things like dashboards and communication to the salesperson needs to become available so that they're in the know, so that if you're a prospect and a piece of content was delivered to you highly personalized and I'm the salesperson, I need to know that. If I'm in the blind and I don't know that, I might reach out to you with a highly irrelevant touch point. But if I'm in the know, because, on a dashboard, I got an alert right now at this point in time in the day. So therefore, I know exactly what content was delivered to you. Then I know how I should structure my contact, my outreach to you.
Because if we're looking at marketing generally is a one-to-many relationship. That's the way that we would often see it. Whereas sales was probably, I'd have 2 accounts, 4 accounts, 10 accounts. So it's a one-to-one or one-to-few. And what we're talking about ultimately is you could present go back to my example earlier on, where you could actually have one piece of content going to the finance director of a major bank. And at that point, sales would say, what on earth are you doing contacting my contact? I'm supposed to be going out to dinner with them tonight. And we're just supposed to be signing a $100 million outsourcing deal. How dare you do that? So I agree with you. We have to get to the situation where we're talking and we're working together, because that in effect, what we could be doing is marketing can very closely start doing work that currently sales probably should be doing, but probably aren't doing, and ultimately supporting the salesperson and the sales effort and the sales, each sales piece within the pipeline. Do you agree?
Well, I completely agree. But in that scenario that you described, it is a two-way relationship, Tim. So if you're the salesperson and you've got this dinner tonight to go sign this deal, the burden is on you to communicate that in the system.
It is.
So that more and literally say, right now, you're dark marketing. Do not touch this prospect. I'm signing the deal tonight. Okay. Yeah. So that's part of the alignment process that has to happen.
Yes. Yeah. I agree, and that's where you have to have that. You have to have the systems and the communication channels in place to make sure that people are aligned so that doesn't happen. But what I see is what this provides, and I agree with you, is this overlap between marketing and sales, and this podcast isn't about the alignment of marketing and sales, but there has to be that place for AI gets to work. I mean, where else do you see AI working in the sales and marketing areas?
So from an account-based marketing standpoint, which in enterprise B2B sales is very important, everything that we've been discussing so far really is a form of account-based marketing.
It is, yes.
So I think that just going deeper than what we just discussed. So everything we just discussed with a lot of processes, a lot of strategy, a lot of buy-in, again, at the C-suite level, but then all the way down through both the marketing and the sales organizations. That has to happen. So it is much more than just AI from a technology standpoint. So it's much more than just the MarTech, the buzzword, the MarTech impact. It's the process that has to be in place with it. One without the other is gonna fail. Your example of you going out to dinner, and if the process is not in place and marketing does a touch point, and all of a sudden that finance director reaches out to you and says, "Hey, what's this about?" Now all of a sudden,
that's never happened before.
Yeah, right. So I really see, from an account-based marketing standpoint, this being very, very critical. Now, back to your question, I really see a day. And I don't have too much of a crystal ball. I have a little bit of a crystal ball, but I see a day maybe over the next 1 to 3 years where this process is going to be very different in that the entire organization, the entire selling organization is going to have people throughout the entire organization. I'll call them SMEs. They're not salespeople. They're just subject matter experts sprinkled throughout the company who sort of sign up to be available. They just they check a box. I'm available. Okay. I'm an engineer. I'm a finance director, whatever. I check a box. I'm available. And AI technology is going to identify, I call this matchmaking, Tim, identify the people within the organization who are best fit to actually do a follow-up. So in those scenarios, the follow-up for a particular touch point based on an incident, an event, meaning a prospect attended a webinar and then tweeted something. Okay. And so AI does its magic because it can. It's way more powerful and faster than people. And it reaches out to 3 people, 5 people within the organization. And it says, these 5 people are potentially best fit to do a touch point with this prospect over here. And here's why.
Right.
Salesperson is going to be looking at a dashboard and is going to see this. Okay. There was a touch point. There was a prospect who did something online somewhere. These 5 people in the organization have been identified as the best fit. I'm the salesperson. I'm now going to reach out to them and just say, which one of you is available to contact this person in the next 12 hours? One of them says yes. And there's probably some pre-scripted content that's even delivered through AI. And then they can personalize it and then do the outreach. As a salesperson, I'm observing all this. I'm watching all this take place. My role as a salesperson, Tim, as you can see, has shifted a little bit. Instead of me doing that outreach directly with that person, I'm sort of orchestrating the internal, mechanics. And I'm also managing it to make sure it happens, but I'm also picking the right timing and then maybe doing a follow-up with the SME who had the touch point so that I can be in the know on what occurred in that touch point, especially if it was a live conversation and not online somewhere. So I really see that process evolving, and I think it's going to take B2B enterprise sales to a much more sophisticated level. And what I'm really most excited about is I think it can make it a lot more efficient for the salesperson, and it can also make it a better experience for the prospect as well. Yes.
Because I think there's three things there. One is traditionally, I think in a large B2B environment, what happens is that I've just come out of a large B2B organization, and one of the strengths there in that when you work for that organization is your network, which is when you're working in sales, what you're trying to do is pull the right people. Sometimes those people aren't available. Sometimes there's a person that joins, you don't even know that they actually could be the right person for this. The second thing is that I see that there's that change, and I think that people need to start thinking and actually embracing that change, because quite often you get the sort of talk to the hand moment because it's new technology and this isn't going to work, and we're cold callers after all. And I think, if we embrace that change, it actually frees us up to do things that we actually have more time to spend in front of customers by allowing AI to kind of get rid of some of the boring stuff. And the third thing I think is that quite often we mix up the fact buying and selling. And quite often sellers sit in our ivory tower and say, this is what we think is good for the customer. And the customer's actually going, I don't want to talk to a salesperson. I actually want to deal with stuff online. And I think that's important that we can actually fundamentally change the buying process, which is the thing that we should be focused on rather than the selling process.
Exactly. There's a company that comes to mind that, AI aside, was a very early adopter of this process, again, without any AI involved at all. And you may have heard this story. It's been around for a while, and it's Indium Corporation.
Right.
They manufacture industrial solder paste, and it's a chemically composited product that's customized for every customer application. And so it's a very engineer to engineer sales process. And so about maybe 10 years ago, give or take, they began to make their engineers be available and to be client-facing, prospect-facing in sales conversations. And it's been the best thing for their business and their customers, because their customers who are engineers can talk directly with engineers. Now, again, no AI in the mix there, just a true testimony and an early adopter of this model of let's put the best fit with the prospect, to give it to that prospect, and not always just have the traditional salesperson doing a follow-up. Hey, I saw you downloaded that white paper. Do you have any questions about it? Maybe I can hook you up with our engineer. No, let the engineer and the engineer on the buying side just have some direct contact, and let the sales conversation start there.
Yeah, and getting that connection, because I think if people have gone online and they've actually already done some research, they already have a good view about what you're like and what your service is like. And I think sometimes from a B2B enterprise perspective, what happens is that we turn up as salespeople assuming you actually know nothing. And actually you probably know a whole load of stuff, right down to what our competitors are doing. And you probably have even downloaded the price books because they're all online. And actually having, and people do want to engage, people want to buy the best product that they can for their organizations, and allowing them to actually have that conversation, I think would actually help to accelerate the pipeline rather than slow it down. Because actually what I see often in B2B sales is the process slows down the buying process. And if you believe CEB figures, the sales process is just about to grind to a halt anyway. So anything that you can do to try and speed that up has got to be good.
Sure. I mean, how many prospects hide behind a Gmail address and go online and conduct their research anonymously because they don't want to talk to a salesperson? They're in research mode. And so the more we can make that process painless for the prospect, and not only painless, but actually pleasant, like relevant, like a good experience. The more that can happen, then the more predisposed that prospect will be to not only considering, but wanting to really look for an opportunity to work with a company that it created a good experience, because whether it's psychological or not psychological, the thought with the prospect is, if that was a bad experience during or a painful experience during the pre-sales process, then is it going to be better after I'm a customer? And the opposite is true. If it was a good experience beforehand, then the assumption is, okay, we're going to continue this good experience when I'm a customer.
Yes. And do you see there being any other changes with AI or any, because I've started using Nudge, as a way of producing content for with your contacts and stuff like that, which is kind of entry level AI type thing, because I wanted to get used to it and I wanted to understand what it was doing. But do you see any other ways that AI is going to actually impact on us from a sales prospecting or sales process position?
I think the biggest thing in the next year or so, because it's hard to really imagine beyond that, because there's so many things that are even unimaginable. But I think within the next year, the biggest thing, Tim, is just the simple task. Not that it's not complex. It's complex for people to do it. It's not complex for AI to do it. And that is to deliver the most relevant content to an individual in the moment. And if you think about a company, regardless of size, although in most cases, we're probably talking about mid to large companies who have either thousands or tens of thousands of people visiting their website, it is pretty close to impossible for humans to configure a set of rules to personalize each of those experiences. But it's not impossible for AI-powered technology to do that, because AI-powered technology can literally process billions of data points. People can't. So the biggest thing is just if I'm a prospect, earlier I was a salesperson, now I'm a prospect and I'm visiting a website. If that experience I get is highly personalized to me, that is an awesome thing. It's an awesome experience as a prospect. I'm much more predisposed to want to engage. Now, in the short term, those brands, those sellers who deliver that experience are going to have a competitive advantage. Yep. In the long term, it's probably going to become the norm. And so until such time, those sellers that can be early adopters of AI powered technology to create that highly relevant experience are going to have a competitive advantage.
And what's your to changing the subject to one of chatbots and how we deal and interact with organizations on a customer service level? Do you have a view on that, or about way that's going? Because at the moment it kind of feels quite immature in the marketplace, but it's always going to get better, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree with you that it feels immature, and I think part of the reason for that is that by and large, most of the chatbot offerings are, I'll call them, canned, and so consequently, it's difficult to create a personalized experience. Now, I know that there are people out there. I actually have a friend who is in this category that delivers customized chatbot applications. Right. So I think sellers really need to make that investment if they're going to get serious about using chatbots, that they really need to invest in a custom-built chat box for them, so that it is a good experience and not a hokey, cheesy experience, which so many of them still are.
Yeah. I've done one of the local pizza restaurant, and it's just very simple and rudimentary. Right. But a client of ours, a bank, you can actually apply for a mortgage through Facebook Messenger. So, and that's a fairly, chunky transaction. Now, I would say it's not the only place that you can apply for a mortgage. They're actually, what they're doing with their customer service strategy is making sure that all of the channels that were previously open stay open, and they have a Snapchat channel as well. But that's a way of them dealing or working with a particular demographic of people that want to actually interact in that way. I certainly have found that Facebook Messenger has probably become the number one way that I'm interacting with people now over any other medium.
Yeah, and it's probably going to continue to accelerate to your point. But this whole conversation we're having, Tim, around AI and the sales process, it's not limited to big ticket enterprise B2B sales. I'm going to give an example, and I have no affiliation here, so this is no endorsement, but H&R Block, this calendar year, they're offering their tax services with IBM Watson. And what Watson brings to the table is, I, as a consumer, so this is a B2C sale, meaning they're selling to individuals. I can walk into an H&R Block office, sit down with an H&R Block advisor, and I'm not going to be dependent on that human being's knowledge base or a set of, data points that are in a database. They now have the ability to tap into data that's in hundreds of millions and learn from that, and then find each and every possible opportunity for me to save on my tax savings.
Right.
So in that example, and again, no affiliation to either H&R Block or IBM Watson, although I'm in the IBM Futures community, but nonetheless, no endorsement there, no paid endorsement of any sort. It's just an example of a consumer product that's available today that is harnessing the power of AI to go tap into big sources of data to find me, the consumer, the best possible tax return.
And do you think that, we've in sales, there's always been a view that what we can do is actually, for most organizations, the cost of sale is probably the biggest cost within that organization. And anything that we can do to basically strip out that cost of sale and automate certain processes is always going to be looked at by an organization. And as salespeople, we kind of got to realize that we need to, get with the program, because that's going to happen. And this is a great example of where what we're able to do is actually not necessarily rely on an individual. However, the fact that they're a subject matter experts, but we can actually rely on a machine that's actually going to do that and offer a better service. But do you think that people will be looking at ways of using AI actually to strip out cost?
Oh, absolutely. I think anything that requires what I call, Tim, heavy lifting, and I don't mean physical heavy lifting, but research, analysis, gaining insights, that kind of thing.
At structured and unstructured data, I think, is important as well, isn't it?
Exactly. And looking at unstructured data has not really even been possible until AI has come into the mix here. I should point out that something that I've learned, because I'm no scientist. In your introduction, you position me as someone, on that knows something about this topic from a marketing and sales standpoint. And I've learned a lot, and I try to learn every day like you, but I'm not a scientist. But one thing I have learned is that AI is decades old. In some cases, it dates back to centuries ago of early writings about the limitations of the human brain. If you go back about 50 or 60 years, in fact, I think it was 1950, one of the first significant scientific papers written was titled, "Can a Machine Think?" So way back as 1950, scientists were thinking about ways to expand the capacity to think beyond the human brain. Now, the computing capacity, technology in general, wasn't there for those early thinkers. And over the last few decades, certainly has evolved quite a bit. And a big, huge factor is that in recent years, like in the last 5 years, a lot of the scientific research in AI has become open source. Right. Up until then, it was very siloed in individual labs where they kind of, kept it to themselves, Yeah. But in the last 5 years, it's become open source. So what we're seeing, Tim, is we're seeing an acceleration of AI-powered technology across the spectrum of society. You and I are talking about B2B marketing and sales, but, we could easily digress and talk about other applications in other areas of the world, healthcare, automotive, et cetera. So we're seeing this acceleration. So anybody that hasn't, caught up to where we are with AI in terms of the accelerated pace should really tune into it, because as you pointed out in the article you wrote, we're already using AI. If you use Amazon, you're using AI. If you have an iPhone, you use Siri, that's AI. When you use Google Translate, that's AI. If you're on Netflix, it's using AI. And, we could list many more examples that have AI under the hood, right? Powering, that technology. And we're just going to continue to see it escalate.
It's been fantastic, Bernie. We're up to 34 minutes. So
wow, already?
Yeah, I know. It goes really quickly. Yeah. So it's been really fascinating. It's been great talking to you. So remind everybody again where people can get hold of you in terms of your coordinates.
Sure. Well, on Twitter and pretty much all social media, I am at Bernie Borges, Borges. My agency is findandconvert.com, and my podcast is Social Business Engine.
Thank you, Bernie. Fantastic. And I'm just hoping that some of the sun from Florida will be coming through my video tonight. Thanks, Bernie. Cheers.
Right.
Thank you.
Tim, thank you for having me.